So last year we made some predictions for the synth market in 2022. Today we're going to look at how we did, as well as peer into our crystal ball for 2023. Hi, I'm Zach Marr from Alamo Music here in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. This is our Alamo Sound Lab channel where we talk about all things music tech related. And today we're gonna look back at our predictions from 2022 and see how badly we did, because no one can see the future. And I'm gonna see how embarrassed we're gonna be today. So number one, let me look at my list from last year. So number one was very few products will ship next year, if at all. I would say that I'm pleasantly surprised that I was wrong for the most part about that. There have been a lot of new products introduced this year. There have also been a lot of products that have already been announced that are still not really shipping. The UBXA from Behringer, I think we've been talking about that one for years now. But there's been a lot of products that have shipped, and from a variety of manufacturers. Waldorf, Korg, Roland, Yamaha. There's been new products. There's been cool new stuff that's come in, and some really exciting pieces. So I was wrong. Happy to admit it, and also happy that we weren't faced with an entire year of nothing shipping. So kudos to the manufacturers for figuring out how to get stuff here. So let's go to number two. Number two was the price of vintage digital synths will continue to rise. That hasn't happened. In fact, the whole vintage synth market is kind of crashed for the most part. Not crashed, but come way back down from its pandemic heights. Although it's starting to tick back up again, but the price of vintage digital synths did not go up. D50s, DX7s are still about the same price, if not lower, than what we talked about last year, largely with the economic headwinds that have hit kind of globally. So again, I was wrong. Happy to admit it though, because there's a lot of cool vintage digital pieces you can still find. So there we go. Number three, the price of some golden era analog synths will stabilize or come down, i.e. the Jupiter 8, Yamaha CS, etc. So I would say that happened. Jupiter 8s came down quite a bit, but then I looked this morning and the cheapest one I could find was like 30 grand. So maybe that just was a temporary thing, but they have sold for a lot cheaper than they did at this time last year, which was in like the mid 20s. CS80s have started listing for around 60K, which again is lower than I think at this point last year. So we did see a pretty dramatic drop off from some of these like ultra rare vintage pieces. So I would say I was mostly right about that. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. All right, number four is that the more obscure vintage analog synths would rise in price. So like the Memory Moog, the OBX8. I mean, OBX8 is not not the OBX8. Sorry, the Matrix 1000. JX8P, some of these like not as iconic synths, the Jupiter 6 would rise in price. And I think that is, I'm like sort of had some sort of right about that. Like the Memory Moogs have gone up quite a bit. They did not come down. And Jupiter 6s have kind of come down a little bit. They're more than they were pre-pandemic. They didn't decrease in price as much as like the flagship ones, but Jupiter 4s also kind of stabilized around 4 or 5. But like the Matrix 1000 has gone up in price. So some of these what's the Prophet 600? Some of these that were in like the $1,000 range, the $800,000 range, have gone up to like the $2,000 range. So yes, that I would say did happen, and largely attributable to some of the re-releases and kind of growing knowledge about vintage synths, and these being kind of affordable analog vintage synths that are like not the holy grail units, but released around the same time and with some really cool features. So there we go. And then number 5 was the synth community would continue to grow substantially, and digital and hybrid synths would continue to grow in as an area of interest. And I think both of those things are largely true. Again, not 100% accurate. I don't think the synth community grew as much this year as I was expecting when I said it last year, but it did grow, and the interest is still there. If you look at the synth market and people buying synths, it is still growing, and it's a category where a lot of other categories like keyboards and guitars have leveled off or dropped from pandemic levels. The synth market has not. It's continued to grow. So I think the community is growing, awareness is growing. I also think the interest in digital and hybrid synths and pushing that technology is happening. You look at the Waldorf M, you look at the Iridium, you look at the Quantum, you look at the ASM Hydrasynth, and you look at the Mini Freak that Arturia just released. All these are hybrid or digital and really pushing the envelope for really interesting, or the Volca FM2, pushing the envelope of exploring digital technology fused with kind of analog filters, kind of picking up that train that happened in the 80s, the mid 80s, and we saw, and into the 90s. So you're seeing like this second era of synthesizer innovation and kind of reinterest happening, and it's following the same trajectory. Analog reissues, and now we're getting into digital and hybrid exploration. So I would say that also is true. So talking about 2023, things that I think might happen in 2023. Let's see. I did not prep with predictions, so I'm going to ad lib. I think that we are going to see a lot of new products hit the market. Will people have money to buy them? I don't know. I think the vintage synth market is going to continue to stabilize and maybe even decline a little bit in value because, again, we're facing economic headwinds going into next year. So I personally think that we're going to see deflation still in most of the prices for vintage synths, digital and analog. So I think there's going to be a lot of new products. I don't know if people will be buying them. I think, too, that pricing for vintage stuff is going to continue to go down. I think, 3, that we may see the beginning of the end for growing interest in the synthesizer world. I think we're seeing this like resurgence of interest in 90s music and grunge, all this, like, at least in the US. And I think that taste might be changing again. We've had this fascination with 80s and 80s revival for a good 10 years now. Is this the beginning of the end of kind of market interest? This is a very particular one, and I hope it ends up being true. Looks like Yamaha may be looking at re-releasing some of their kind of early VA synth technology, like the AN1X. I think that someone found like a trademark that they'd filed for an AN1X Plus. So that would be cool if they release again, that would be in the vein of exploring 90s digital re-releases. I think that would be a super cool piece if they do re-release that. I think there's a market for people that really like that early VA Yamaha synth sound. So those are my kind of like 4 really broad stroke ideas about what might happen next year. What do you think may happen? I might make another video on this that's a little bit more thought out, but just thought I'd throw that out there so I can see next year if I'm right or wrong, embarrass myself again. But hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts or comments, leave it below. Thanks for watching.